Four Corners. I've been an ABC Middle East correspondent way back, a long time ago. But here we've got a real and current and fascinating person to speak with us, which is Boaz Bismuth. And for those of you who don't know, Boaz is foreign news editor and senior analyst at Israel Hayom, Israel's largest daily newspaper. But that's just one of the strings of his bow. He's also a senior fellow at the Bar-Ilan Centre for International Communications. He spent 15 years as Paris correspondent for Yediot Ahronot. Why not? 15 years as Paris correspondent does sound good. And he's reported from many war fronts, including Kosovo, Iraq and Afghanistan. He's also an expert on covering Arab countries. Most recently, the Arab Spring in Cairo, in Tunisia and Libya. He was the first Israeli journalist into Iran in 1993 since the 1979 revolution. Been back to Tehran since that. And he's also been a diplomat, as he describes it, a walking Israeli flag in an Arab country, and a member of a rather exclusive club, which is Israeli ambassadors in Arab countries. I believe there were only 3. He was in Mauritania. Anyway, we're very lucky to have him with us today, and I'd like you to welcome Boaz Bismuth.
Thank you.
So look, I might start just by asking a couple of questions, and then we'll throw it open to questions, and I know you will have very many, and so we'll try and get through them. Just to begin on a personal note, Boaz, you mentioned the other night your family was originally from Tunisia. Mm-hmm. Your mother was a teacher. You went to school in Haifa in the 60s and I suppose the early 70s. And your mother, you said, believed in you going to a mixed school, that it was a good experience. And obviously it's really worked for you because you've used, I imagine, all those language skills. I wonder, reflecting on that period of growing up and now you have children of your own, how do you think Israel has changed? And is that kind of experience possible anymore?
First of all, you mentioned, good evening everybody, and that is the last event, and bravo for still being strong and continuing to come and come to reach to the last event. First of all, you said that just before us there was this lecture about erotica, and I thought it was the same, the woman before and now the man. But you prefer to speak Middle East, so we shall speak. I will say that it's an excellent question, because it's, again, you know, I came here to Australia like 3.5 weeks ago, and I had many lectures, and of course in many of the lectures, I mean, one thing that came again and again was the changing world, meaning a world, a society that is evolving all over the world, not only in Israel, and Israel is part of the world. So it is very correct what you started by mentioning my mother and the choice she made, of course, with my father. And in the book I wrote, the first, I mean, you know, when you write a book, you thank, of course, and I do thank Bernard and Jacqueline, which are my father and mother. And why? Because they made me look, analyze, discover the world through the heart. And that was something that I will never forget and that I always cherish. And that is why I also made my trips to the Arab world or to hostile countries easy, because I was taught, or I was brought up in Israel, that you always look for what do you have in common with the other and not what separates us. And this you need in a region like ours in order to stay optimistic. But at the same time, I mean, can we in Israel, you ask, have the same, or can we do the same choice today? First of all, yes, because the same schools I was in Jaffa, not in Haifa, they still exist. I mean, those same schools exist, and you'd see little Israeli boys, or Jewish boys if you want, with little Israeli Arab children, because they are Israeli, of course. And it is, of course, a possibility. Of course, as I always tell, I mean, one of the nicer things about, and it really, I'm sorry to say, but it drives me crazy when they compare my country, I mean, of course, to an apartheid country, because I always like, when I go with my wife on Friday to Jaffa, when my friends from Jaffa, Arab, of course, Israelis, come to see me. Can it still happen today in Israel? Of course. On the other hand, do we still, I mean, have a bigger conflict among us? Of course we do. And maybe if you'll permit me, maybe with a little insight to show exactly all the problem, which, I mean, your question by maybe a story which is not answering directly, but it gives you a bit the atmosphere of Israeli and how we think. In the year 2000, approximately a month after the beginning of the second Intifada, I was in France, correspondent, as you said. And by the way, they could have left me there till today. No one would have called back home. And it's funny because yesterday it was the 31st of August, so the 31st of August 1997, underneath my house, Princess Diana had a car accident, and I covered it from the tunnel beneath my house. It was yesterday, about a few years ago. Let's go back to what I say. In 2000, beginning of the Second Intifada, the Jewish students in University Dauphine, 16th arrondissement in Paris, beside Port-Maillot, invited me to give a lecture concerning the Intifada. These were really, really rainy days for Israel. You remember the press. I mean, I guess even in Australia we were very much criticized. I mean, Israel was so criticized. Everybody forgot the great proposition Barak gave Arafat in Camp David, but of course we were the guilty ones, as usual. Now, I was invited in Dauphine, and I come to the room, which is, like 500 students, and the three first rows, all with kafia. And Palestinian students, pro-Palestinian, and of course, the poor Jewish student who brought me in, he was like in his early 20s, the only person that I've seen in my life who never developed any muscle, and he was sitting beside me, and he said, listen, do you mind maybe we should cancel the event, because they were really very hostile, and remarks, and pancartes, and he said, no, please let me speak. And of course, when I started to speak, and of course all were against me, very vicious, very hostile, everybody. And I said, listen, in 1997, 3 years ago, I covered in the city of Strasbourg in France, the Congress of the Front National, right-wing party, extreme right-wing, fascist, racist party of Jean-Marie Le Pen. I told the crowd. 7 minutes with the watch, I told them, I left the place. Because as an Israeli, as a Jew, with the education I got, I couldn't be with those people. I share nothing with those people. But when I traveled to Iraq, to Syria, to Libya, 18 Arabic countries, after a few minutes, I recognized the same smell, the same essence, the same perfume, the food that I like so much in Israel. What I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, let's always keep it political, never racial. So that's exactly answering indirectly your question. Unfortunately, I do not believe that on the other side in our region, the other countries, it's always like that, and they tend to make mistakes and confuse anti-politics, anti-Israeli and anti-Semitism.
Well, let's skip forward then to now, and really the subject of this session, which is, are we dreaming? Is this a chance for some sort of peace deal to actually be made? Since the election this year, and I'd like you to talk to us about politics in Israel now. To me, it seems you've got quite a different sort of coalition running the country to what there has been there previously. You've got someone who looks to me like a sort of George Clooney-like figure, the journalist Yair Lapid, who has crafted this coalition to exclude some of the ultra-religious. You have Bibi Netanyahu himself talking about a two-state solution, and now we've got this American initiative. Is this different? Do you believe this is a possibility for some kind of deal?
You spoke about school. I remember the first composition, the first writing I did in French when I had an essay to do was Mrs. Raschenberg, my Romanian teacher, and she was in French, and she said, I remember the subject was, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I remember this now. I would say one thing. First of all, it is true that what has changed, our politicians, our parliament has changed. Like almost 50% of the members of the Knesset are not the same. New figures. Does this mean that they're better? I'm not so sure. They still have to prove. Yair Lapid, before that, I was asked a question. What does Yair Lapid think about a certain something? And of course, I did not answer because I do believe that is just a few months and he still has a lot to prove. I will tell you, concerning peace, there is one thing that is constant. For Israel, it has always been, ever since 1948 and the creation of the State of Israel, strategically, our aim and target. This is something that we always, we know how much it is important for our country to be recognized, to be a normal state, to have normal borders, to have, imagine, right now, for example, I'm in Australia right now. This morning I woke up, before coming to the festival, I was walking around, I'm in Bondi, and you see the people having breakfast, some are surfing, the other one are thinking, where are they going to have lunch? I look at our region. Today, 65 years after, waiting to get a gas mask. Is this normal? Of course it's not normal. Can't we live normally? I do not want to give you this Shylock speech right now, but only to tell you how much this peace is important for us because we are concerned. Yet at the same time, this desire of peace does not mean also to make peace in any price and the suicide. Meaning, peace is very nice, peace is important. I very much respect people who speak about peace now. But let's imagine now, we're not now in Sydney, let's imagine I take a plane now and I fly to Argentina. Okay, and I would like to dance the tango, and I learn tango. And no Argentinian woman wants to dance with me. I'll be ridiculous by dancing alone. I need that partner for myself.
All want to dance.
I know. Meaning it's very easy, it's very nice to speak about peace now, but we still need partners. Unfortunately, you mentioned Netanyahu. In 2009, when he makes his Bar Ilan speech, you see a right-wing prime minister declaring his desire of a two-state solution. On the other side, you do not see them still recognizing the idea of a Jewish state. So I would say that we have evolved a lot, but on the other side, we're still stuck in the past. So again, in order to make peace is a beautiful world, but I think that on the other side, they must prepare public opinion for peace and recognizing Israel.
So, how will you know when they've done that? What will be the measure of that? What are you looking for?
It is very simple. First of all, I would expect a moderate, because by the way, you forgot also another thing. If we started with stories, let's continue. You have to understand one thing. We're just now negotiating, and we're supposed in 9 months to reach probably not, but we're supposed to reach a solution. 9 months, pregnant and you have a kid.
Yes.
Let's see. I do believe that after 9 months, many babies will be born, but unfortunately, not peace in the Middle East yet. This is my desire, and that is why Israel has shown to the world, how much it's keen to have peace. Now, look what's going on in the Middle East right now. Look at Egypt. Look at Syria. Is that priority? Even New York Times, who was very supportive of President Obama, are asking themselves about a month ago, is that the priority of the world right now, those negotiations with the Israeli and Palestinians? But you must understand one thing. Let's try to imagine right now, you would like to, as I said before, you would like to buy yourself an apartment. And you go to buy the apartment, and the apartment that you really like, let's imagine in front of the ocean, in this apartment, someone lives. The twin brother of the owner of the apartment. And he tells you, I will not recognize the contract, I do not want to sell, and I'm intending to stay in the part of this apartment. Would you buy the apartment? You will not buy the apartment. That's exactly what that they're proposing right now. Because I'm negotiating with Fatah, which are the moderate, Abu Mazen, but of course not with Hamas. Part of it. More than that, I would say. Even the moderate, which is Abu Mazen, with whom I would like to live in peace, with whom I would like to make business, with whom I would like to make him gain support, to whom in 1994, 1 year after the Oslo Agreement, I called the world in order to support him. I became his best PR. But what's so bad about him recognizing me the chance of having a state? And I would say one thing. Two things which are really very important to know today. First of all, we spoke before with Lydia, journalist from New York, born in Cairo. We spoke about the fact that, how would I say, but the Arab Spring, and we didn't have time to speak about the crisis of the Arab state. You see the crisis. Any Arab state that you can mention today, you will see the crisis. It is institutional, cultural, evolved, economical. They have a real crisis of the state, and you see how much countries like Iraq, maybe Syria tomorrow, Libya, of course. How much they're becoming sliced countries. But the world is so happy by the result that we are going to create a 22nd one. The Palestinians are going to have a country. But at the same time, when we are creating a 22nd Arabic country, in which 21 are not very performing beautifully, and all of you can see, the fact that I can have my tiny, and by the way, when you say colony, the imperialist Israel, have you seen? I've never seen such a tiny imperialist wants just to be recognized as one Jewish state. Who, by the way, in today, I know it's very fashionable to be slim, so my width is only 12 kilometers, so maybe I'm a model, but I'm not recognized as a Jewish model.
I think someone said the other night when you were speaking and covering some of these things, they said, well, why talk? And to which you gave quite what I found a very interesting answer, a diplomat's answer actually. You said, well, we have to talk because otherwise there'd be a vacuum, and also Israel doesn't want to be isolated. Sure. But really, you're not an optimist at all for peace. It seems to me that's a very pragmatic answer. And I was struck by, some of you may have seen that documentary, The Gatekeepers, which interviews all the living Shin Bet leaders. And there's sort of quite a dominant theme in that is, yes, Israel's political leadership has had a lot of tactics, but no strategy. And of course, the finale of the documentary is, we can win every battle, but not win the war. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that to talk for the sake of talking, this is a dead end, isn't it?
First of all, you've known me already for 2 weeks in Sydney, and I think that you saw that we Israelis like to talk. So why not talk? We talk. Look at the festival. What do we do all day? We talk. But to be serious, I will say that, I will tell you, you do recall properly, and it is totally right what you say, that I said, first of all, I don't always agree, but I do appreciate a lot the books and the articles, even if I don't agree someone, of Thomas Friedman from the New York Times. Sometimes as Israelis, he annoys us. But once I totally agreed with him when he spoke about preventing that we should prevent a vacuum. And this I wrote it also already before, because, this vacuum, if you just do keep it, of course, this is a way of strengthening the extremists, and on the contrary, not giving a space, political space, to the moderate. So we need to talk. Secundo, I do believe that, even if it's illusion, after the Oslo Agreement, we have seen how much this spirit of Oslo, bringing the Palestinians from Tunis, allowing them, or permitting them, or habilitating them to keep my security, well, that spirit is totally gone. It has failed. And that's a fact. It's not like interpretation. It's a fact. Even if we want it or not, we can accept or not, that is fact. But at the same time, still, no one has invented a better thing for Israel than peace. What is frustrating me is that after almost 30 years traveling the Arab world, I have seen how much on one-on-one, me as a kid in school, my professor at university in France that I chose, Camille Mansour, advisor of Arafat, one-on-one, it's totally, how would I say, something that we can achieve, something that we can make it. How come that when these Arab people, when it becomes to crowd, it's like, like your book in Anglo-Saxon, Far from the Madding Crowd, it is becoming totally mad and does not accept me. I would say that it's about time they also evolve. They will understand that I'm here. And that is why I continue to believe in peace. I will always give it a chance. And there is a third reason that I said that you did not mention today, and it concerns all of you. All of you. And I will tell you. Nowadays, there once was a time when we Israelis used to come here and you looked at us as heroes, and we come to the battlefield, of course, over there, and we're at war, and you say bravo, and we're very happy, and we go back there again, and we felt like heroes, and so on and so on. But nowadays, I come here and I look at you, and I say bravo, and I support you, and I think that what you're doing is wonderful. You'll be surprised. Because nowadays, war is not only in the battlefield as it used to be. The front line is also here. The front line is in the West. The front line is everywhere. So maybe I was ambassador for 4 years. You're going to be ambassador all your life. And it's going to be a tough job. And in order to be able to support me, because I need your solidarity as an Israeli, I cannot without it. And that is, by the way, we're much stronger than our unfortunate enemies and maybe friends tomorrow, is that we have what you call solidarity. Now, in order for you to be able, to support me, and to be able to, when you will have debates at your work or in your neighborhood or with your neighbor or friends, to speak about Israel, I want still to be the Israel that gives example that it seeks peace. So maybe sometimes it's, as you say a lot in Melbourne, maybe in Sydney, blah, 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 blah. But maybe, by chance once, it will work. When will it work? When they will forget, first of all, when they will understand how much they will be much more prosperous by choosing the path of peace with us. And maybe one generation will come that will forget why we even went to war. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I did not come here to sell illusions. I said before, great expectations lead us only to our times.
Would you like to see some change made to the expansion of the settlements to help with the talks and perhaps give them a better chance of going forward?
Look, concerning settlements, this is a very, very, if it would have been simple, if it would have been a black and white question, I would tell you, of course, some people in Israel, many people in Israel, believe that settlements are a provocation. Others would tell you, unfortunately, if you look at the Arab side, they will tell you that, in my house in Tel Aviv, I adore my apartment, I miss it so much, it's also a colony for certain Arab, and that is the problem. They must understand,
But we're talking about an expansion, that
sure,
maybe
you
could argue, we're here, we're invaders. We know that story too. But you're talking about an expansion. I'm saying, would it help, do you think,
No.
to make it a more,
No.
why not?
No, I will tell you. No. You have an example. Unfortunately, I think if it would have been good, I think that you got two brilliant examples of two prime ministers, Ehud Olmert and Ehud Barak before, with this amazing territorial compromise in which you had 97% of what was supposed to be given and 3% compensation. And even to that they said no, because it was the idea. And don't forget that with Ehud Olmert, what he proposed, Abu Mazen, was that in all Jerusalem, not only the Arab neighborhood of Jerusalem, not only the Arab neighborhood, the Christian neighborhood, even the Armenian neighborhood that until today I don't understand why, and of course we keep the Jewish neighborhood, and even for that they have said no. But the reason why I don't think that that would be a source of to resolve the problem is that, look, I will tell you, in 2005, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon decided to make this unilateral step. He saw that we cannot negotiate with the other side, so we are going to retreat from the Gaza Strip. And by the way, many people forget, but during that retreat, you also retreat from 4 settlements or colonies in Samaria. What was the first action the other side has done? First of all, the only thing, first of all, the thing was to, unfortunately, not only to destroy the houses we left behind, because Shimon Peres said, let's leave the houses. By the way, it was nice houses. It was to destroy the synagogues you had over there. So that was really silly, ridiculous, and by the way, as I said before, not anti-Israeli, but anti-Semite. To destroy the synagogues, it is a symbol, I do believe. But even then, I would say, elections after 1 year, we speak of the Arab Spring, you had elections, and who won the elections? Of course, Hamas. And you remember the quarrel with Fatah. So you might say, in a very correct way, maybe it doesn't really help us to make those settlements, not now. But I will tell you there's another thing, and that is important for you to remember always. In politics, and you have elections next week, I don't think that our political system is the best system we have. We have the proportional, but really, to the extent, like in Third Republic in France or Fourth, really you could not run a country. You remember in France, we went to this Fifth Republic, with a proportional way of voting. So we're still there. We're still at the old style of voting where everybody is represented, but it's very, very difficult to run a country. Unfortunately, I do believe, that is my opinion, when Prime Minister Netanyahu released the what you call in the press detainees, but I would call terrorists, 2 weeks ago, and you take a big risk because no one promises us to have peace, but you make this good step. Don't forget that in his coalition, he's got also parties that disagree with that. And what does he give them in return? Those settlements. So I will conclude maybe with one phrase that maybe we'll all agree, even if the part who's for settlements and the part who's against settlements. There is an amazing Israeli scholar by the name of Dan Shiftan. He wrote a beautiful book called Koach HaFrada, The Necessity of Separation. And the first sentence, and I quote, the first quote in his book is, Israel still today does not know if it wants to swallow or vomit the territories.
So one last question from me for a moment then. Some people say the two-state solution is completely dead. What do you think?
First of all, it's not dead because of us. We have agreed to that. Although
I'm not saying because.
No. But I just remind you one thing. When I was younger, in the 70s, I remember we had a poll. I remember because it's big in the newspaper. 75% of Israelis were against a Palestinian state. 75%. When I was a kid, I had a prime minister, a lady. Before you had a lady also, but we kept ours longer. And we had
treated yours better.
We treated, I'm not so sure after Yom Kippur, but after Yom Kippur War. But we had a prime minister who did not recognize the notion of a Palestinian nation. Nation. Not right wing. This is Labour Party. Look how much we have evolved when we speak about two-state solution. Now, in fact, whenever we travel, and you've all been and visited Jerusalem, so you can go either on one road, road number 1, or the other one. When you take the other one, you see how complicated it is, how much it is divided. Look, it's not simple. Clinton and Dominique de Villepin, American president and French prime minister, both defined our conflict as the most complicated one. Why? And why? You can think, let's think together. You've got two, not one, two emotional people, us and them. No, we're not Australians and we're not even Austrians. We're Middle East. We too. We're two emotional people in a very restricted piece of land. That's something, a factor that you cannot, an ingredient that you will not be able to change. It will not become tomorrow New Zealand or Australia. We shall always be this restricted piece of land. And unfortunately, to this, you add the religious problem that instead of looking what we have in common, one side all the time goes, I am here first, and the other one said you did not even exist, like Arafat, if you remember, in Camp David. So I would say that this is very, very complicated. I do believe, and again, you say about the two-state solution. The problem is not, if the two-state solution, we can realize it or not. It's the fact that on the other side, they will recognize that this is not Muslim land. It's as simple as that. It's as straightforward as that. And I would say even more, you can also ask me a very difficult question, a very legitimate question. And you can tell me, listen, you Israelis, why do you need so much, to be recognized as a Jewish state? You have a state, you do whatever, when you're at home, if you want to paint the walls in red like my socks, do you need my permission? You do whatever you want. But the reason why I need them to recognize me or Israel as a Jewish state is in order that they will stop not recognizing the idea that the Jewish state cannot exist.
Would someone like to... Are there some questions?
Yes.
There's a hand up there, person with the baseball cap.
Yes, just continuing this topic. You said that in your experience, when you meet people of Arabic descent in your wanderings, you usually have a good experience on a personal experience. I know for a fact that there are, similarly it happens within Israel proper. Israeli Arabs and Israeli Jews tend to coexist quite harmoniously. And even, so the greater the actual integration as opposed to the separation, I actually see that bringing people together, living next to it as neighbours, say for example in the West Bank, actually having neighbouring Jewish and Arab towns is actually a model for coexistence and peace. And rather than disengaging, which we've actually seen fail, don't you think engaging with the Arab world and actually trying to encourage Israeli values, democratic values would be advantageous as opposed to trying to separate them?
First of all, concerning separation, I would say one thing. I'm now in Sydney for 2 weeks. And when I come to a city, I like to see all the city. I like very much the Opera House. I like very much the beach in Bondi. I like very much another beach I have visited. I forgot now the name. Mandy, Arnie, I forgot it. Mandy is beautiful. I would live there. So, very nice places. And, I even asked to see mosques. Because I respect neighbors. And I even missed, falafel and trina. I wanted to go. And they brought me to a neighborhood that I forgot the name. Lakemba. And how funny, Australia is so open-minded. I didn't see many of your Australians who live in Mandy living in that street. Fortunately, people tend to regroup and live together. Also in France, I lived in France, not 15, 16 years. I was lucky enough. I wanted 17, but they said basta. So even in France, when you go to La Goutte d'Or, on the eastern part of Paris, you will not find the people of the 16th. Usually, it's not only because of the color of your skin. It can be also because of economical reasons, education, where the parents come. Also, sometimes also immigrants want to live together because that's what they want. It's not always the fault of the other side. That's how it is. Look at Australia before coming to Israel. Now, when you come to Israel, it is obvious that it's always better when people live together. You live together. You share the same life. You can understand better, and that is why I chose, as a journalist, to take many times risks and to go to among my neighbors, and not just reading books, or as 80% of the journalists said, do today, look at the net, what is going on the other side. Many times I was even criticized. During Shepherdstown, a negotiation between Syria and Israel in 2000, I was criticized to be a left-wing Jew when really I got letters because I did say that the Syrians were ready for an agreement with Israel, and I described them as human. Because I'm very humanist, and you saw before when you spoke about Syria, me as an Israeli, I'm taking the risk. I don't think Assad should be there because I feel compassion for Syrian people, because I don't do it something racial. This is something about human beings. And in my side in the Middle East, I think that we, Israel, are the last country to receive lessons of how to behave, or how we behave with our neighbors, yet at the same time, no one, and if anyone comes here and describes to a reality that is pink and everybody loves everybody, this is not the Middle East.
But are you saying, don't tell us what to do, basically?
No, I didn't.
I think there is a sort of suggestion in what the gentleman said, that, whilst we may not live in the same street, going to the same schools, perhaps the internet, that integration in that way, I think it's happened in Australia. It does wear down the fears that people have of one another. Would you, and you particularly as someone who's travelled to the Arab world so extensively, you must sort of see that.
I am the example, really, of the Israeli, of course. I grew up in Jaffa. I grew up in Tel Aviv, but my parents sent me to Jaffa. All the little Arab kids, when I still go to Jaffa today, and if you know Jaffa, Abu Elafia, and all that places, I don't even pay because they're my school friends. My wife, by the way, today after 6.5 years, Orthodox conversion, but was not even Israeli. The wife of the Israel ambassador was not even Jewish. I'm a very open-minded, and I said, if we're writer festival, Levinas is my hero, Emmanuel Levinas, who taught us as Jews, to go towards the other, not to be closed. So of course, this is like blunt, this is like obvious, but you have also a reality. But let's not forget, if you come today, for example, to Tel Aviv for holiday, and you need a pharmacy, or if you go to McDonald's, the Goy of Shabbat, today, are the Arabs from Jaffa. They're not like immigrants, Christians who came Anglo-Saxon or blonde Norwegian. You will see Arabs from Jaffa who come and work. So I do believe that you do see that mixture nowadays. Do we do it enough? No, we don't do it enough because of reality. I will be honest with you. Not only because of us, sometimes because of them. I believe that this is a good step. And the last thing, and you remember what I said before about Battleline and how much how much I appreciate why this or any community, a Jewish community in the world, does for Israel. I will be the last one to tell a community who supports us so much, don't interfere, let me do what I want, I think it's in contradiction if I would say that with my answer before.
Another question. Lady.
The discovery of shale and the eventual extraction of petroleum or oil, do you think that'll make a difference to the rest of the world where they look at Israel or help Israel?
The lady asked about the discovery of shale, and I don't actually know.
Gas.
It's gas, is it? And where's that being discovered and how extensive is
In the
it?
Mediterranean.
Oh, okay, right.
So first, usually, I mean, in any country of the world, I mean, such a discovery, on the contrary, it makes, a cooperation. So first of all, I think that it will really contribute for you Australians, Woodside, I mean, But it's always good for Woodside. My good friends in Mauritania, they would give me the beer because it was an Islamic Republic over there. But I would say that for us, Israel, I was invited in Sky News, Britain, about 3 weeks ago, and they asked me the same questions as Sky News. In a normal situation, I mean, it's very good for our economy, it's very good for Israel. I mean, look what Gaza has done to Qatar, and look at Algeria, how they resist the Arab Spring because they could, like 16 times in 20 years, in 2.5 years, raise salaries. But in our region, nothing can be normal. Nothing can be like in other countries. Look immediately, Turkey, this is ours. Where should we pass the pipeline? Look at Lebanon, part of us is us. Look at Cyprus. Look at coalitions.
We were doing something with Greece.
With Greece, of course, with Greece. And we know why, because when you make Greece, so it's like a red line, a red carpet for Turkey. So, of course, I mean, a lot of perspective, economical perspective for Israel, but strategically, it might have a big effect. And really, I would say that this is a big test to Turkish-Israeli relations.
Another question.
I just want to go back to the reconciliation between the Arabs and the Israelis. We know the saying, make love and no war.
And that's always good.
Yes, and exactly, I'm for it. But what would happen? Why does Israel not facilitate the possibility of Arabs marrying Jews? And raising a family that's tolerant of both.
Good.
What is the great difficulty there that one has to, overcome?
You've got in Syria community, a Jewish community, I guess. In the Jewish community, you've got like in America, I guess you've got liberal community,
Yes.
and I guess you've got the conservative, like in America, you do,
Yep.
and you have the Orthodox. Are the Orthodox? I mean, if tomorrow, for example, someone from the community would want the rabbi to marry him with a girl from the neighborhood I spoke before, will he facilitate it?
No.
Is he Israeli? We're in Australia. This is not about Israel. This is about Judaism. This is about halacha. What can I do? I mean, I didn't invent it. I am an example, a pure example of someone, I mean, believe me, who knows how difficult the process is. But when Israel, because it's Israel, I mean, how we live, I mean, it's a state, it's a Jewish state. And of course, I mean, the rabbis have things to say, we can agree or not, but that's a fact. And I'm not here to say that I support, I describe a situation. Well, now, you cannot control when you fall in love. Can't control. I came on a plane about 10 years ago. I saw that lady. She was the chosen one. That's the one I wanted. What could I do? But at the same time, when we thank God, I thank my family, and thank my parents, and thank my future kids, she wanted to convert. I mean, I never asked her. I mean, how can you ask such a thing for a person? And by the way, in Judaism, it's not even allowed. I mean, you can't influence, and on the contrary, you make life even more difficult at the beginning. I mean, it's a nightmare. Then I thought to myself, there are two ways. There is a first way, of course, I mean, saying how frustrating it is. We're in 2013. There's another way of looking at things and saying that's such a thing. I can choose a non-Jew. I can drive my car in Shabbat. If anyone is from Melbourne, I can have my favorite restaurant, which is Vlados. And by the way, they don't have any kosher stamp over there. But this is my choice. This is my interpretation. I believe if I contribute, if I'm a good father and a good friend, this is Judaism about. Someone will say, no, you have to do Taryag mitzvot, all the mitzvot in the world. Everyone interpretation. But a religion, it's not that I will go now to the tailor and I'll say, look, I want a suit, and you make me a suit according to my desire. This is what we get. This is inheritance. Everybody has his own interpretation. Recognizing or not, it reminds me in Israel, after the new government, there was a Galei Tzahal program, and one auditor asked the anchor, and she said, we have a new party now, Lapid, with a coalition with Bennett. And probably now with this new coalition, maybe the rabbis will tolerate, in this new Israel, mixed marriages. But that's not Israel. This is Judaism. So you can't mix everything and put it on Israel.
Yes, but the question is, why does it have to be a religious country? Why is there no movement
Good question.
for
Good
it
question.
to become
Good
a
question.
more secular
Good question.
country?
Good question.
And I mean,
Good
one
question.
of the highest population of gays is in Tel Aviv these days.
I know.
And
First of all, good question.
okay.
First of all, no. But now we ask it differently. Now you ask differently, I mean, why do everything has to be religious laws? And this is something that is today changing, where you can tell me, why every religious, as if you're in marriage, why can't you have a civil marriage in Israel? Why do you have to go to Cyprus to get married? That is the why, that is a question that is totally legitimate, that today Israel is thinking. It is true that Tel Aviv is one of the most liberal countries, I mean, not only in the Middle East, but in the world. It is true that in Tel Aviv today, for me, you know, when I walk with my wife, and my wife is very feminine, I feel bizarre. I mean, I'm like a reactionnaire. I'm like unique. They look at me, they take photos of me. I go with a girl, but still, this is Tel Aviv. But I would say I'm proud that this is my country. I mean, I will not make the same choice. By the way, it's very good, this choice, because then we, the not very handsome, can have the beautiful ones. But I would say, if you'll permit me one thing, this is a question that is totally legitimate. This is a question that follows the first question Madam has asked me concerning society evolving. And of course, those questions are things that today Israel is asking more and more. I do believe you will have more and more pressure. I do believe this change, like Yair Lapid, that is the way they're taking Israel. But again, never forget one thing. Life is about what? Life is about, on one hand, we need conservatives to keep the values of our grandparents, and they were all not always wrong. We need liberals to progress and the balance. And this is the question of Israel. Israel is a small country with many, many communities. I think that today, for example, let's leave the marriage and take, for example, the army, which is even a more dramatic question right now. On one hand, seculars must understand that Orthodox will not go to the army. And something I can tell you in front of the camera, I tolerate it. By the way, we speak about a little army, a little clever army. You know, if you look at Parashat Behar, you know, one parashat that we have, you can see the big conflict between Orthodox Jews and Zionist Jews. I'm a Zionist. Of course. I went to the army, I'm a Zionist. They will not go to the army, it's against their doctrine. But shouldn't they contribute? If I go 3 or 4 years to the army, they can go to the hospital, they can be teachers, they will contribute in another way. Israel is too small. We are too small, yes, to permit ourselves to have a civil war, and look what's going around us. So this is why I do believe that try not to ask too much, but try still to ask and to evolve.
But I think you mentioned the other night that the ultra-Orthodox will form up to 20% of the population quite soon, and you've got a lot of people there who are not contributing to taxes, they're not in the army. I mean, is that going to be an issue?
First of all, not contributing to taxes, you know.
Well, I don't know, maybe that's wrong, but I guess
example,
I'm asking the broad issue, and I'll hurry it along because I want to get to some
as you can see, I'm not here dressed up as an ultra-Orthodox, although I have a black suit. But I don't have a kippah on my head. And I would say one thing, you know, people don't go to the army, also among left-wing. They don't recognize, morally they can't go to the army, and I don't
so you don't have a problem with the increasing number of ultra-Orthodox?
Again, I say, as an Israeli who served, I mean, I went to the Lebanon War, I can tell you one thing. I mean, I said before, there are things I cannot expect. And it's not popular what I say, but I'm saying you reality. I mean, these are something that are unrealistic. Menachem Begin, Prime Minister, Ariel Sharon, Ben Gurion, were they idiots? I mean, two of them, Ben Gurion and Begin, the best prime ministers we ever had, the best. Both of them understood, especially Ben Gurion at the beginning, the status quo between Orthodox and secular. It means, I mean, you can say what you want about secular, about Orthodox, which are not my world at all, but we can do business with them. Meaning what? They will contribute. Until 77, you couldn't even imagine that they will be in government. Since 77, they are in government, and they contribute more and more. Can they do better? Of course they can. Do you expect Arab Israelis to go to the army? No, because they're Arab Israelis, moral question. Do I expect Orthodox Jews to go to the army? Because of their ideology, I do not expect it, because I know them.
They're also unemployed. They also take the,
they should, but what did I say before? They should work. There's no, and by the way, in Orthodox life, in the Shtetl, one second, before Israel was created, they worked.
We've got a question right up the back. I'll take the gentleman up the back because we've had a conversation in the front here. Oh, the lady. Yeah. Oh, you? Oh, he was just the hand raiser.
That's all right, but it doesn't disturb me. I live there.
I just wanted to say, to ask, throughout history, guys, there's always been a conqueror and a vanquished. And Israel seems to be the only country in history where that's allowed to happen in the wrong way. You know, and do you think that's because it's a Jewish state? Is there some other political reason behind it? Why is Israel demonized and being forced to give back land where forever in time it has not been the case?
You can even ask differently and tell me, for example, I mean, now that we have two entities, and if you do give back Gaza, so people will tell you, of course, how can you let them be so isolated and no linkage with the West Bank? So, of course, by saying so, you forget, for example, but you would never think of asking the same question for Kaliningrad for the Russians. I mean, and you can let them be isolated like this in the Blonde Island. So, of course, when it comes to Israel, so, of course, I mean, people expect something to be very, very different. I will tell you one thing, you know, I mean, don't expect honesty when it comes to our Middle East. Again, I'm not telling you this evening or coming to tell you that we're perfect. We are not perfect at all. Inside in our society, weddings, when you said Orthodox can contribute better. Sometimes, I mean, decisions that we take concerning settlements, we are not perfect at all. But the way we're being described exactly on the other extreme is totally hypocrite. You want an example? I'll give you a concrete and very recent one. A few weeks ago, of course, the European Union, Brussels, the technocrats in Brussels have decided, of course, that they do not recognize, I mean, our frontiers, our borders. I mean, everything, and not more than that, they will boycott everything that has anything to do after before the 67 lines. I must say, I mean, how dare they? What kind of hypocrisy? Now, inside, let's think together. We have 28 states in the European Union. So first of all, inside, of course, you've got Cyprus. One of them, a member Cyprus. What's going on in northern Cyprus with the Turks, of course? The Turks that they wanted, thoughts of integrating to the European Union. Turks, by the way, in Cyprus, Turkish Cyprus, the prices, for example, today of houses are much more interesting than Spain or of course, the French Riviera. So the same British population that criticizes Israel, of course, they will buy houses in conquered territory in Cyprus from the 70s. Look how hypocrites. I can give you examples, I mean, full examples. Or Spain with Zapatero, that is, I mean, so much criticizing us, and two cities inside Morocco right now. And I can give you so many, and the Kuril Island, the Russians that are giving us lessons now with Iran, and with Syria, look how many territories they have on one side, and of course with China. And France, I mean, we're now not very far away from New Caledonia. I mean, New Caledonia, I mean, this is really, and we are the imperialist state. I mean, we're a state that if someone in the north, in Kiryat Shmona, sneezes, me in Tel Aviv, I have to use a handkerchief.
I'll rush you on because I can see there's a few questions, lady with the blonde hair.
You have been in all these Arab countries, and to me, from what I see, all the misinformation that the Arab population is getting about Israel, did you find anybody that actually recognized that Israel is not the boogeyman? Did you find anything like that?
First of all, I must say again, and I will maybe conclude at the end, if I'll be permitted, by something very optimistic, because we can't finish this Writer Festival not with optimism, because otherwise I wouldn't go to 18 Arabic countries, and I wouldn't be an ambassador in an Arabic country, and I wouldn't contribute by building a cancerology hospital over there, and I don't tend to go to places I don't like. And I have no problem whatsoever. My choice was always to go towards the enemy, yet I go, or my future friend, but I go with my eyes wide open, not wide shut. And I would say one thing. Of course, I mean, you can never make a generality, and of course, I mean, I'll give you an example of 4 years where I lived in an Arabic state, which is Mauritania, one of the 22 Arab League countries. You know, my press officer, Bouyagi, every time, I mean, he was when he was in the morning bringing me my newspapers, and every time I knew he was leaving him to my secretary, I knew there was a problem. It was because he was Mauritanian, so he felt uncomfortable. And why? You would have, of course, my picture with the Magen David on my front head. They would say that my wife, of course, is filming the president with her girlfriends, and really rubbish that you can't even imagine, and many things like that. But at the same time, wouldn't I have many friends who come still today? 4 years after I left, don't I still get mails from amazing friends? Don't I have courageous friends who are even, you know, on Facebook? It's like transparent. You can see, I mean, did any of them cancel me for friendship? Or in the, let's take the Arab Spring. Let's take Tahrir Square. Tahrir Square, I was shocked by the fact that in Tahrir Square, they asked me, I mean, when I was going there, to show me their passport. In Tahrir Square, part was the Islamic Brotherhood, another one the secular. Of course, I always went in the part of the secular, because there are more ladies over there. So of course I went there. I went on the other side. And when I went there, when I went on the other side, and they would ask to show me the passport, and I was like shocked. Why? In order to make sure no Israelis. Now these are the moderate, the secular. I can give you, but we don't have time, an hour, and we had a course in the Shalom Center about an institute about the fact why and the mistakes Israel has made that we reached to that situation today. And I can tell you briefly, because we had exclusive relations with dictators, because that's what they were willing to give us, and the people never really know. So for example, in Mauritania, when the French ambassador would bring them a movie, Ben-Hur, in 2004, they will be overwhelmed. When the Spanish ambassador will have a author festival, they will say, wow, when we cancel them debts with the IMF and the World Bank, they will do it discreetly, so people don't know. So we also accepted to sell ourselves in a very, very, how would I say, very cheap price. So we also made mistakes. And tomorrow, I do believe, and this is to answer your question, if I would decide to make, or an Arabic country would want to make relations with me, I would like to be the wife, not the mistress.
Another question? Yeah.
Yeah, just on the settlements. When you, in fact, it's come out of some of the statements by the Shin Bet representatives and the gatekeepers.
Yes.
Don't you think that by continuing to allow these settlements to go on and be built, that Israel is putting itself beyond the possibility of peace? That the Israeli army, the Israeli police will not be able to dismantle them, even if a peaceful solution is found.
I wish it was true. It's very simple. I wish it was true. I wish it was true that on the other side, I mean, they will recognize that, let's make it only, according to what you say, we only have a territorial problem. Would you tell me now, sir, that the problem between me and my neighbors is only territorial? I'm asking you a question. Partly, but that's not. If it would be a territorial problem, you're right, but it's not.
But I mean, a problem is solved in many parts, I think.
Look, the question
People
is,
might say, and another thing you mentioned, one of the red lines you drew the other night, and I can see why this is an existential threat, as you explained it, which is the return of refugees.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were explaining that was an existential threat and was beyond the red line. So, you know, there's another aspect of making peace, and I think it is a question. Where do you start?
I will tell you. First of all, where do you start? I mean, only 2 weeks ago, I mean, we released, there are how many Jews here in Sydney and Melbourne were upset by Israeli decision to release, I mean, prisoners without getting a promise in return. When we gave the Gaza Strip, I mean, this was a step. When they were serious with us, look at President Sadat. President Sadat was serious. He wanted to make peace, and that, by the way, before, if I have to flatter a leader in the Middle East, I would think, of course, as I said before, Begin and Ben-Gurion, but I will put on Sadat almost in the same line. For me, he's one of the heroes of my childhood because that was a sincere man, a courageous man. In 1973, it was one of the causes of 2,600 Israeli soldiers dead. He's the cause really of one of our disasters because for us, Israel 2,600 is a huge number. But when he decided to choose peace, he was serious. Israel did not give back only settlements. We gave back a city. Yamit was a town. Yamit was a town. Now, here, I think by the question that the lady at the last row has asked me, is a bit, I mean, the same subject. I mean, with Israel, we're always very much demanding. But, I mean, I would like also, and I would think that the world would maybe succeed in advancing a real solution and getting them, recognizing them, then instead of all the time looking at Israel, putting a little bit pressure also on the other side, meaning recognizing them that we are a Jewish state, stop speaking all the time about, because territories, look at us in 1948, when the international community drew the line, yes, the line of Palestine or Israel, I mean, Arab nation, a Jewish nation. Was it Israel of today? We said yes. We said yes, it was, I mean, you look at the map, look what Jerusalem to whom it belonged, and look how Israel was small and weak. What did we do? We cried? No. We went to Parashat Lech Lecha, and we said, Avraham Avinu, we deserve everything. We should be in Judea and Samaria. We should have Jordan on both sides of the river. No, we didn't say that. That's what we got. We worked the land, and we worked hard. The other side declared war. And this goes back to what Madam asked me before. Would you like us to be the first example in history where the losers takes it all? No.
Another couple of, we've got time for it, yes.
And this sort of follows on from Sadat, how courageous and brave he was, and serious. Do you think that the impasse which is happening with so-called moderates, Abbas and others, is because they fear that they're going to be very dead, like Sadat, if they give us an inch? I mean, the people around them will kill them immediately.
Did people hear that question?
Good question. Good question.
Would you like to repeat the question?
No, the question was maybe on the other side, they were afraid of to recognize this Jewish state, for example, not to have the same faith as Sadat. So first of all, let's be honest. I mean, let's be...
To be dead. Yeah.
To be dead. So let's be first of all honest. I mean, I would never thought that I would come to you, Jewish community, and you know, when Sadat was assassinated, we were shocked that we said it can only happen to them. A few years after, look what happened to us. So unfortunately, we also, I mean, should look at ourselves in the mirror and be really, really cautious because extremes, of course, we have on both sides. Yet we don't have the same amount of extremes, let's be honest. And I would say one thing. The point is, we spoke about Syria before. And when President Obama decided to go to Congress and not to strike, as other presidents did before, of course because of trauma of Iraq, but also because we're in an era where it's public opinion that dictates, the street dictates, in the West, but also in the Arab world. Unfortunately, you have this question, what comes first? I mean, the chicken or the egg? So here, of course, you might ask the question, but I will answer you, with your permission, with an insight. In 1993, we had, of course, on the 13th of September, in the White House, the signature of the Oslo Agreement. You know, it's a soul. It exists so much that I forgot the name. So we had the Oslo Agreement, and of course everyone was overwhelmed. Everyone was very happy, and everyone wants peace, like me, supported them. And this only to show you that you spoke about settlements, and I think it was another person. I think you spoke about settlements. I will tell you my belief. It's true, I'm not a peace now. I'm not a left wing, but I don't think that a square meter worth the finger of a child. So you see a bit my way of thinking. But at the same time, I believe that me having this square meter saves the finger of any Jewish life. Until they're not serious. That's a fact. That is a fact. So I will go again. I mean, and then when they're serious, we can be serious, and we've proven it in the past. Now, concerning what you said, 1993, Oslo Agreement. My newspaper sends me to Jabal al-Husseini. It's one of the Palestinian camps of 1948. You had 4 like this in Jordan, when of course there's an historical debate, did Israel kick them out, or did they go because Arab leaders called them? It was 90-10, 90%. There were some cases in history, let's be honest, but most of them, of course, fled in order to come back as winners, as conquerors of the land. Of course, I went there. It was a Friday issue. For the Friday issue, my article was supposed to be front page with my picture in big, like they do when I come back from Iran and all that stuff. It makes my mother happy, so why not? So of course I went to al-Husseini camp. Unfortunately, over there, no one was happy. No one accepted the Oslo Agreement. While in Israel, everybody was celebrating. On the other side, they said everything or nothing. So these are things that I heard by myself. Does this mean that they will never evolve? Does this mean that among Palestinians, I do not see people that might one day recognize me? I'll tell you more than that. In the other session, we spoke about democracy, and I was very pessimistic. And in my book also, and I was, unfortunately, I was right. Because if tonight I'm wrong, I won. I live there. I wish I'm wrong. I mean, there are examples. But I will tell you, the paradox is that if there will be a democracy one day among those 22 states, when and if they will have a state, it will be them. Why? Because of the example of Israel, because we're linked together. Because of geographically, because we're linked, because of all this interaction of the past. Unfortunately, even the war. So this big paradox is maybe really, and this is what I hope, that the enemy of yesterday can be really the partner and example for the others for the future.
I think that is a hope. Now, another question might be the last one up there.
Well, I'm interested in your thoughts, like as a journalist, former journalist and former diplomat, taking you back to settlements. Something that I've observed here in the media, and the way that the settlement building is reported on, is that it's done very, very generally. More settlements were built in the West Bank, and there's no nuance that's given. There's no description that a settlement has been built in an area that across both sides is large agreement. There'll be of agreed land swaps under a future peace deal. And so I'm interested in your perspectives as to why there's not more nuance in how settlement building is reported by the foreign ministry and by the Israeli media as well.
First of all, it's a very complex situation. I mean, the settlements, even in Israel, it's a big debate. That part of the population, even in the right wing, sees, sometimes the building of settlements in a certain time as a provocation. But at the same time, I told you the big mistake the other side is making is by looking at all of Israel as a settlement, like many of them. Some say in English they will not say it, but when they speak in Arabic, they will definitely say it. I mean, they won't say it in Australia, but they will say it in Durban during the events over there. I will tell you one thing. I mean, let's speak about our reality is. There is a place called Karnei Shomron in Samaria. I don't know if you've ever visited Karnei Shomron. A few weeks ago, I was invited for Shabbat to a Rabbi David who helped me a lot and the Giyur. And if you're all over the world, you would think that settlements are really inside the Arab villages and among, you just place them, which is not reality. The place is totally empty. Does this mean that we have to build there? You have to understand one thing. This is also an ideology. some people in Israel do believe that this is Israel. Some people for security reasons, some people for religious reasons, some people for ideological reasons, something for justice reasons. Now the only thing that plays for Israel, that in the past, and I say it again, if Israel ever since 1948 never retreat from a piece of land, I would say, yes, you're right. But you must understand one thing. There is also what you call, you cannot, for 65 years, do not recognize a state and call for the elimination of the state and think that the other state from the day 1 to 2, I mean, they will just go back to the old borders as if nothing happens. This is number one. Number two, even according to international law, I mean, in order to give back and to return the settlements, you have to return them to the country, I mean, it belonged before. 1988, King Hussein of Jordan says, I mean, it's not mine anymore. Palestine, I mean, you can go up in the sky and come back down. You will not show me a flag. Palestine, you know, ever since Roman time, the name. You will not show me a Palestinian flag, a Palestinian coin. I do believe that we have new states. Look at Africa. We have invented many, many, many countries. I am willing, I have taken this decision of proclaiming a 22nd Arab state, although between us, I don't think they really, I mean, it really existed. We went very, very far. A little sign on their behalf, I believe that Israel will make more concessions because we want peace. How would I say, that even me, that is not a peace now, that believes in Eretz Israel, that I mean, I'm someone also who refers, I am someone who believes, I mean, in God and looks at reference in my ancestors' time. Still, as I said before, in order to achieve peace, I would make a very, very big sacrifice. But it takes two to tango, as I said before, and maybe it's a conclusion.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I have one last question, actually.
Please.
I'll stop you there, which is a wrap-up question. And you were saying, you yourself did your national service. You went to Lebanon. You've got a little boy now who's 6 months old.
Little King David.
Little King David. So do you think when you look ahead for little King David, and do you see a time when he will join the army? Do you think in 17, 18 years that will still be the way in Israel, and that there'll still be the battles to fight? And how do you feel about that?
Look, I will answer you first of all in a very simple way. First of all, I'm very happy to have little King David that I'm going to see tomorrow. After the conversion, my wife's name is now Ruth. My name is Boaz. It's beautiful. Maybe it's the Messiah. But to be serious, I will tell you one thing. If I have to choose between little David going to the army, which is never sympathetic for a father, or King David at the age of 18 not having an army where to go, I prefer him to go to the army. Thank you.
That's where we'll leave it. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Boaz.
Thank you. Wow, that was the end.
You did it. You made it.
I would have
Well done.
one thing not related to this.
But I want to tell you also something. It's important. To both of you. I go to the synagogue.
I do have another